here. I'm probably the oldest guy in the room, but that's okay too. But we are a young company, and I'm here to introduce you to a new process called Transaction Validation Inc. And we lovingly call it Secure Electronic Transaction. We don't have a lot of people in the audience here, but I'm going to do a little audience participation as well. So, how many of you have either a merchant that you know of or one that you process for, and they happen to have a problem with fraud? How fun. And a particular type of fraud, which is what we primarily look at, is something called first-party fraud. I lovingly call it friendly fraud, because it basically is when an individual buys something and they don't actually want it, or they claim they didn't receive it, and they claim it's either not delivered or it wasn't what I ordered or whatever, and they charge it back. How many of you have ever heard of that? Can I see? Okay, a couple of you, okay. Well, let me just inform you about what is going on in the industry, and I apologize. I am an economist by background, so I've always used charts and whatever, but nonetheless, the only one that's really important here is this first one. And this is based on a global survey that Visa just released a month or so ago. And it looks in particular at first party, they call it first party misuse, but it's first party fraud. And in that global survey of over 500 merchants, they found that a significant number, that would be up in the neighborhood of 45%, had experienced e-commerce first party fraud. And in the last year, those same merchants experienced a 25% increase, which is quite significant. Fraud tends to have a tendency to migrate. And so one of the issues then, where's my flipper? There it is what is it in the North America? Well, indeed, North America seems to be the new place for friendly fraud, and indeed has increased significantly. About 20% of all transactions on e-commerce are considered friendly fraud. But we have done some estimates to see that as high as 80% of those transactions are friendly fraud. Depends on the merchant category code, the risk, and other things. So it can be a real problem. And in order to deal with that problem, Visa and MasterCard and a bunch of third parties have figured out ways to potentially navigate and reduce it. And we're one of those. A survey was done as to what is the key elements if you're going to have an effective first-party fraud removal or try to detect it and get rid of it. And I'm pleased to say that Transaction Validation, SET as we call it, because it gets a mouthful, basically addresses all 5 of these very important criteria for effectively managing it. So the next question is, how? Well, one of the key differentiators that we have in our system or our process is that we give the merchant or the processor or the ISO the power to manage this at the transaction level. And because the cost of fraud continues to rise, I used to measure this for Visa, it was part of my job, helping to set interchange rates. It basically has gone up now to $200 per $100 a transaction. So anything that can reduce the chargebacks in and of themselves is going to be valuable. So, how do we do it? Well, very quickly, this is kind of a stair step, but the gentleman who was here before me, I think we need to partner, because basically we are using what I call multi-factor authentication on steroids. However, what it does is it basically allows the merchant to use all the wonderful tools and fraud detection things that it's already being used, particularly the AI and everything else, to determine which of their transactions seem to be more prevalent for first-party fraud. We can set that up as a part of our integration. Then what happens? The merchant then sends, assuming that the transaction looks risky to the merchant, the processor, the merchant sends that transaction to and completes it, gets the authorization code, and we in turn get a message, and we send a message to the cardholder, hopefully the rightful cardholder who has listed their name and number there. If not, then it's fraud. But if it is the rightful cardholder and they get a message and it comes back to them, not with a huge code, it's just simply yes or no, did you do this transaction? And that stimulates another message to the cardholder to say, yes, you accept that transaction. Or no, I'm declining that transaction because I don't recognize it. In other words, it went to somebody else's cell phone or somebody else. So then what happens? If the answer is yes, then the process completes. And if that cardholder decides to try to charge back, guess what? We have compelling evidence. Our reporting mechanisms on the back end will provide all the evidence necessary for that merchant to basically beat that chargeback. So, how much does it cost? What are the benefits? Well, the key benefit is it reduces merchant and processor direct and indirect staff expense, which I was alluding to earlier, if the chargeback never happens. But as a processor, if a chargeback does happen, you get to still charge whatever it is to go through the process of doing that transaction. You can also sell this service to your merchants and provide a markup and another revenue stream. Bottom line is, we're offering a special deal for the ETA. We do it by way of basically charging for the number of transactions that go through the TVI system. Very simple. And we put them in packages. And then it can be renewed if you extend, or if you have a large merchant, we'll happily talk to you about a real deal. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for bearing with us, and more importantly, the ETA and Matt for giving us this honor. And we'd be happy to talk to you at our booth and show you how all of this works. Thank you so much.